The team had landed on the remote planet just a few days ago, expecting a routine research mission. The planet was nicknamed Deathworld by those who knew its history, a place of extreme weather, unpredictable terrain, and wildlife that seemed almost designed to survive anything. Despite its dangers, the team was confident. They were skilled scientists, trained explorers, and seasoned adventurers. But no amount of preparation could truly capture the raw, unpredictable power of this world. From the moment they stepped off their transport vehicle, the air felt heavier, as if the planet itself was testing them. The sky was a dull gray, clouded with thick rolling storms that moved faster than expected. Rocks and cliffs jutted out at odd angles, making navigation difficult even with their detailed maps. And everywhere they looked, signs of past explorers. Failures were visible, scattered equipment, ruined shelters, and markings that warned them not to underestimate the planet. The team shared uneasy glances, but kept their focus on the mission. Their task was to collect samples from specific regions, gather geological data, and study the strange flora that grew in patches across the barren land. On the first day, they moved carefully, checking each piece of equipment twice, helping one another climb slippery slopes, and marking their path with sensors to ensure they could retrace their steps. They were cautious but optimistic, joking quietly with one another about the planet's ominous nickname. Humor helped ease the tension, though a quiet unease lingered beneath every smile. By the second day, the challenges of the Death World became harder to ignore. Their vehicles struggled with the uneven terrain, consuming more fuel than expected. One of the team's drones, sent ahead to scout, was damaged by strong gusts of wind. Small injuries began to accumulate, scrapes, bruises, and the occasional twisted ankle. But the team pressed on, driven by curiosity and the desire to complete their mission. They reminded themselves that these were the risks they had signed up for. Then came the storm. It was sudden, violent, and unlike anything they had seen during their training. The wind picked up so fast it knocked over their equipment tents, tearing flaps and scattering supplies. Rain, or something heavier, almost like a mix of ice and water, fell in sheets, blurring vision and making the rocks slippery and dangerous. The team scrambled to secure what they could, but the storm seemed to have a mind of its own, targeting their small group with unrelenting force. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the usual navigation tools started malfunctioning. Every sound, every crack of a falling branch, every rumble of shifting rocks felt amplified, echoing around them in the wild emptiness. In the chaos, they realized their communication equipment was failing. The portable radios, normally reliable, were unable to maintain a signal back to their base. Panic began to creep in. They tried repeatedly to call for help, but each attempt ended in static, followed by silence. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the team began to understand the harsh reality. They were completely alone in an environment that could not be tamed by skill or experience alone. Nightfall arrived without warning, and the temperature dropped sharply. They huddled together under makeshift shelters, using whatever materials were left from the storm to protect themselves. The cold was biting, and even their high-tech clothing could not completely shield them from the elements. Tension rose. Arguments flared over small mistakes. One person blamed another for a damaged rope, another for misplacing an instrument. But underneath the surface, fear was the real driver. Everyone understood that one misstep could be fatal. During a brief lull in the storm, the team gathered to assess their situation. Their supplies were low, their communications were unreliable, and they were far from any safe location. They calculated their options, weighing the risks of trying to move to a different location versus staying put. Each choice felt perilous. The youngest member, barely in their 20s, looked around at the older, more experienced members with wide eyes. They had seen danger before in training simulations and minor expeditions, but nothing like this. The silence that followed their calculations was heavy, filled with the unspoken thought, "We may not make it out of this alone." It was during this moment of quiet despair that the leader of the team, a calm and pragmatic individual, made a decision. "We have one option," they said firmly. "We send an SOS. We cannot rely on surviving on our own if the storm continues, and we cannot risk waiting any longer." Everyone understood immediately. Sending an SOS meant exposing their exact location to anyone who might be listening, but it was their only chance. They carefully prepared the signal, making sure it contained all necessary coordinates and information about their situation. Every member contributed, triple-checking details, hoping that someone, anyone, would respond in time. As the SOS was transmitted, a mixture of hope and anxiety filled the group. They listened to the faint sounds of the transmission, hoping, against hope, that it would reach someone capable of helping them. Hours stretched into what felt like days as they waited, each member sitting in silence, watching the storm rage outside their fragile shelters. The wind howled, the rain lashed against the rocks, and the uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on them. Even the smallest sounds, the creak of a tree branch, the distant rumble of falling rocks, made hearts race. During the night, conversations became rare. Instead, they shared quiet moments of support, offering blankets, water, or simply a reassuring touch. Some spoke softly about their families, their homes, and the life they hoped to return to. Others stared out into the storm, trying to imagine what the world beyond the tempest might look like. In the back of their minds, each knew that survival depended on more than just skill. It depended on trust, patience, and sheer luck. By morning, the storm had lessened slightly, though the planet still felt hostile. The team checked their equipment and tried the radios again. To their relief, a faint response crackled through, a signal that someone, somewhere, had received their distress call. The voice was calm but authoritative, offering instructions and reassurance. Relief washed over the group, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the hardest part, being rescued from such a dangerous environment, was still ahead. Though exhausted and battered, the team felt a renewed sense of hope. The SOS had worked, help was coming, and though the death world was still as wild and dangerous as ever, they had taken the first critical step toward survival. They prepared for what was next, knowing that their ordeal was far from over, and that the coming days would test their courage, their skill, and their ability to trust those who were on their way to save them. The team had survived the storm, but the challenges were far from over. Even with the faint promise of help on the way, the death world remained as harsh and unforgiving as ever. The ground was littered with debris from the night's violent winds, making every step treacherous. Rocks were slippery, and deep crevices appeared in places where the soil had been washed away. The survivors moved cautiously, helping each other over obstacles, testing each foothold before committing their weight. Their muscles ached from the previous day's exertion, but they had learned quickly that any lapse in focus could have serious consequences. With the SOS sent, the team entered a period of waiting that was almost unbearable. Each hour stretched into eternity. Time seemed to lose meaning as they scanned the horizon, hoping to see any sign of approaching rescue. The storm had scattered their markers, making it hard to navigate, and the extreme cold made even the smallest tasks exhausting. They worked in pairs or small groups, ensuring no one wandered too far, constantly checking their own endurance as well as each other's. Even small injuries like cuts and bruises could turn dangerous if ignored, and everyone knew the importance of vigilance. The psychological strain was becoming evident. Some members were restless, pacing or muttering under their breath. Others were quieter, staring blankly into the gray distance, lost in thought. One of the older members, a veteran of several dangerous expeditions, tried to keep morale high by reminding the team of previous successes in challenging situations. Stories of survival, quick thinking, and teamwork filled the quiet spaces between the wind and distant rumbles. Humor became a fragile lifeline. Small jokes, funny observations, and shared memories of home helped ease the constant tension, even if only for a few moments at a time. As the hours passed, the team had to face basic survival issues. Food and water were limited, and every ration had to be carefully measured. They shared what little they had, distributing supplies evenly to ensure no one went without. They collected melted snow for drinking water, filtering it as best they could. Every small task required planning, effort, and concentration, and even simple acts like starting a fire for warmth became significant achievements. These activities gave them purpose, something to focus on besides fear, and strengthened their sense of teamwork. In addition to the natural challenges, the death world itself seemed alive with danger. Strange creatures, some resembling large predatory animals, could be heard moving in the distance. Their calls echoed across the barren landscape, a constant reminder that the planet was not hospitable. The team kept watch in shifts, rotating carefully to ensure that no one fell asleep at a dangerous moment. Nights were the most difficult. Darkness made even familiar terrain appear strange and threatening. Every shadow seemed to conceal a hidden danger, and the team's nerves were stretched to their limits. During a brief moment of calm, the team gathered to discuss their situation. They reviewed their emergency plans, checking supplies, equipment, and health. Injuries, though minor, were treated with care, and each member had to be honest about their limitations. The leader reminded everyone that while waiting for rescue, they also had to maintain readiness. Rest was important, but alertness was equally vital. Every decision mattered, no matter how small. Despite the danger and discomfort, moments of personal reflection helped the team endure. One member thought about family and friends, about the life waiting for them beyond the storm. Another reflected on their career, their choices, and the unexpected path that had brought them to this desolate planet. In quiet conversations, they shared fears and hopes, creating bonds that had never existed before the ordeal. These human connections became a lifeline, something that even the planet's extreme conditions could not touch. By the second night after the SOS was sent, the team noticed subtle signs that someone might be on the way. Distant lights flickered on the horizon, almost imperceptible against the gray landscape. Some members doubted what they saw, attributing it to hallucinations brought on by fatigue, hunger, and fear. Others held on to the belief that it was the approaching rescue. The group decided to mark a safe path in case help arrived, using reflective markers and signals that could guide the rescuers through the broken terrain. Every action was taken with precision, hope, and caution intertwined. As the day progressed, the team encountered unexpected challenges that tested their patience and skill. The ground shifted in places where it seemed solid, forcing them to find new routes. Equipment continued to fail, from damaged navigation tools to frayed ropes. They learned quickly to improvise, using available materials to repair what they could, or finding alternative ways to complete necessary tasks. Creativity and adaptability became as important as physical strength, and the team discovered new abilities and strengths they hadn't realized they possessed. The mood shifted slowly, from despair to cautious optimism. Each small victory, a repaired radio, a stable shelter, a safe climb over a jagged rock face, added confidence and renewed energy. The team began to plan for the moment when the rescuers would arrive. They cleared areas for landing, prepared markers, and rehearsed signals that would guide the approaching team safely. Every step was carefully considered. Mistakes could have serious consequences, but preparation and coordination gave them a sense of control in a world where control was rare. During the quiet hours, stories from previous missions and expeditions were shared. The leader recounted incidents of survival in extreme environments, emphasizing the importance of teamwork, patience, and observation. Others shared their personal journeys, explaining how they had trained for situations exactly like this, though none had imagined. A planet so hostile, Laughter occasionally punctuated the tense silence, a small but powerful reminder that the human spirit could persist even in the harshest conditions. As night approached again, the team remained vigilant, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The wind was less fierce than during the storm, but the temperature dropped, and the darkness made even familiar terrain appear alien. Every member of the team understood that the approaching rescue might be the most dangerous part of the ordeal. Approaching vehicles or personnel could be hidden by fog or terrain, requiring precision, coordination, and trust. They prepared themselves mentally and physically, knowing that the lessons of the last 2 days would be tested again. Through it all, the team's bond grew stronger. Fear was still present, but it was tempered by trust, courage, and determination. They had survived the storm, endured the long hours of waiting, and adapted to the extreme environment. Each person realized that survival on Deathworld was not about strength alone. It was about preparation, resilience, and the willingness to rely on others. They learned to listen, to observe, and to respond quickly to changing conditions, knowing that every action could save lives. By the end of Part 2, the team understood one critical truth: they were not alone anymore. Somewhere out there, the rescuers had received their call, and the hope of survival was no longer just a distant dream. Every step they had taken, every challenge they had faced, had prepared them for the next stage. They had waited, survived, and endured, and now they would face the approaching forces with courage, ready to meet whatever the death world had left for them. The horizon shimmered with movement, faint but unmistakable. The team's eyes, trained to notice even the slightest change in the death world's harsh landscape, caught glimpses of approaching figures. At first, it was hard to tell what they were seeing, shapes blurred by the haze and distance. But soon it became clear. The rescuers had arrived. They were not ordinary humans. The Deathworlders, as the team had heard about in rumors and reports, were elite specialists trained to operate in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Their approach was precise, methodical, and almost unnervingly confident, even from a distance. The team's emotions shifted from cautious optimism to a mixture of relief and awe. These were people who had faced environments far deadlier than anything the stranded scientists had yet encountered, and they moved with a calm efficiency that spoke of experience and training. Each member of the stranded team felt a surge of hope. The storm, the hunger, the cold, and the fear, all of it had led to this moment. Rescue was finally within reach. As the Deathworlders drew closer, the team could see the details more clearly. They wore protective suits designed for extreme weather, equipped with tools and devices that could handle the planet's unpredictability. Their vehicles were advanced, rugged machines capable of traversing cliffs, crevices, and loose soil without faltering. Even the way the Deathworlders carried themselves suggested preparation for anything: swift, precise movements, scanning the terrain, and constantly communicating with each other in quiet, controlled tones. There was an initial moment of tension when the two groups met. The stranded team, exhausted and wary, hesitated as the Deathworlders approached. Communication was difficult at first. Instructions were given, questions asked, and explanations offered. But the Deathworlders' language of experience and efficiency was unfamiliar. Misunderstandings were possible, and in a place like this, mistakes could be deadly. Yet, slowly, the team learned to trust them. Each action, each demonstration of skill, reassured the stranded scientists that they were in capable hands. The Deathworlders quickly assessed the situation. They examined the team's injuries, checked supplies, and scanned the terrain for immediate dangers. Their eyes missed nothing. Every damaged rope, every unstable ledge, every precarious pile of rocks was noted, cataloged, and managed. The team watched in awe as problems that had seemed insurmountable were addressed calmly, efficiently, and decisively. For the first time in days, the stranded scientists felt that they could breathe a little easier. Despite the relief, the challenges of the death world had not vanished. The terrain was still dangerous, and the rescue itself would require skill, planning, and courage. The Deathworlders divided the team into manageable groups, pairing each member with a specialist who could guide them safely across the unstable ground. They demonstrated how to secure harnesses, distribute weight when climbing, and navigate tricky slopes. Each instruction was precise, leaving no room for confusion. The team realized that their survival depended on following the Deathworlders. Guidance without hesitation. As they moved together, the team saw the Deathworlders approach to danger. They advanced slowly, methodically scanning the environment, predicting hazards before they became threats. If a loose rock threatened to fall, a Deathworlder would move to stabilize it or signal the team to reroute. When weather conditions shifted, suddenly, a gust of wind or a brief downpour, the rescuers adjusted instantly, maintaining safety while continuing forward progress. Their presence was a lesson in discipline, preparation, and the power of experience. The stranded team began to rely on them not just for physical guidance, but for confidence. Fear and doubt, which had weighed heavily for days, began to lift. Conversations grew easier, laughter occasionally returned, and small moments of camaraderie emerged. One of the younger scientists, who had been pale and withdrawn since the storm, smiled at a joke shared by a Deathworlder, realizing that even in the harshest conditions, humanity persisted. Bonds were forming between the two groups, built on trust, respect, and the shared goal of survival. During the rescue, challenges arose that tested everyone's courage. Narrow ledges required careful balance, icy slopes demanded precise steps, and hidden crevices forced quick problem-solving. At one point, a small rock slide occurred, sending loose stones tumbling dangerously close to the team. The Deathworlders reacted instantly, signaling the group to take cover, guiding movements with authority and calm. The stranded team followed without hesitation, their training, fear, and hope blending into swift action. The rock slide passed without injury, leaving everyone with a renewed sense of respect for the rescuers' skill. The team's leaders observed quietly, taking note of how efficiently the Deathworlders handled every obstacle. They realized that survival on the Death World was as much about mindset and preparation as it was about physical endurance. The rescuers never panicked, never hesitated, and never underestimated the planet's dangers. Every member of the stranded team absorbed these lessons, understanding that the coming hours would require not just following orders, but internalizing these practices themselves. The terrain gradually shifted as they advanced. Cliffs gave way to flatter ground, but the landscape remained wild and unpredictable. Water ran in sudden streams, mud was deep and treacherous, and patches of fragile soil threatened to give way under even a light step. The Deathworlders adjusted continuously, leading the team safely through each hazard. When equipment was needed, a rope, a harness, or a climbing tool, it was provided quickly and efficiently, ensuring that no one lagged behind or risked injury. Throughout the journey, communication remained vital. The Deathworlders spoke in short, clear phrases, and the stranded team repeated instructions to confirm understanding. Every detail mattered. One misinterpreted step could have disastrous consequences. By the end of the first day of the rescue operation, the team was exhausted but safer than they had been in days. They set up temporary shelters for rest, food, and recovery, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. During the night, the team reflected on the day's progress. Relief mingled with awe as they realized how fortunate they were. The Deathworlders' training, courage, and efficiency had transformed a near-impossible situation into a controlled, manageable one. Each member of the stranded team felt a mixture of gratitude and inspiration, seeing firsthand what human skill and preparation could achieve. Stories of the Deathworlders' past missions, shared quietly around the temporary fire, added to the sense of admiration, and trust. By the next morning, the team was ready to continue the journey. Confidence had replaced fear, and a new rhythm had formed. Step by step, guided by the Deathworlders, they navigated the remaining hazards. The planet remained dangerous, but the combination of trust, skill, and cooperation had turned survival from a desperate hope into a tangible possibility. By the end of Part 3, the stranded scientists understood one fundamental truth. Help had arrived, but survival still required courage, focus, and teamwork. The Deathworlders were not just rescuers. They were teachers, guides, and partners in facing the planet's relentless challenges. And though the hardest parts of the journey were still ahead, the team now faced the coming obstacles with renewed determination, ready to meet whatever trials the Deathworld had left for them. The extraction began at first light, with the team and the Deathworlders preparing for what would be the most dangerous part of their ordeal. The terrain ahead was harsher than anything they had yet faced. Jagged rocks, deep crevices, and treacherous slopes marked the path forward. Every step required careful planning, coordination, and focus. The Deathworlders moved with calm precision, guiding the scientists through each obstacle, but the dangers were constant, and the team knew there would be no room for mistakes. The first challenge came quickly. A narrow ridge stretched across. A steep drop, barely wide enough for one person to pass safely. Wind gusted unpredictably, and the rocks beneath their feet were loose. The Deathworlders secured ropes and anchors, instructing each member on the safest way to cross. The scientists moved slowly, hands trembling from exhaustion and fear. Each step was deliberate, calculated, and accompanied by encouragement from the rescuers. When the last member reached the ridge safely, a collective sigh of relief filled the air. It was a small victory, but an important one. It reminded them that even in the deadliest places, careful action and teamwork could prevail. As they progressed, the Deathworlders showed their skill in anticipating dangers before they became threats. A shallow stream, seemingly harmless, turned out to hide a series of deep holes in the mud. Without warning, a scientist could have stepped into one of these pits and suffered injury. A Deathworlder quickly signaled the group, rerouted their path, and demonstrated how to test the ground before stepping. The stranded team marveled at their efficiency and instinctive knowledge. Every decision was precise, leaving no room for error. The next obstacle was even more daunting, a series of cliffs that required climbing with limited equipment. Ropes, harnesses, and anchors were in short supply, so the team had to rely on technique and coordination. The Deathworlders demonstrated exactly how to distribute weight, secure handholds, and move smoothly to conserve energy. Each scientist climbed with careful attention, aware that a single slip could result in serious injury or worse. Despite fear and fatigue, they trusted their guides completely, learning in those moments that courage often comes not from absence of fear, but from following proven steps with full attention. Halfway through the extraction, a sudden weather shift added another layer of danger. Dark clouds rolled in and a cold wind swept across the cliffs, making rocks slick and reducing visibility. The Deathworlders reacted immediately, adjusting the team's movement, creating shelter where possible, and guiding the group through the rough patches. The scientists relied on the rescuers' experience, realizing that preparation, calm, and focus could overcome even the most unpredictable elements of nature. Every step became a careful blend of physical skill and mental alertness, and the team's trust in their guides deepened with each successful passage. In one particularly tense moment, a small landslide occurred near the edge of a steep slope. Rocks tumbled dangerously close, sending dust and debris into the air. The team froze, hearts racing, as the Deathworlders took control. Quick commands, precise positioning, and coordinated movement allowed everyone to move out of harm's way safely. The event reinforced an important lesson. On Deathworld, danger was constant, but careful observation, fast thinking, and clear communication could prevent disaster. Throughout the extraction, the team witnessed acts of quiet heroism. A Deathworlder extended their own safety rope to help a struggling scientist. Another carried heavy equipment over dangerous terrain to relieve the team. And yet another took a detour through hazardous ground to scout for safer routes. These actions were not performed for recognition. They were instinctive, born from experience and a commitment to keeping everyone alive. The scientists, inspired by these examples, found strength they did not know they possessed, helping each other and following instructions with growing confidence. As they neared the final stretch, the terrain leveled slightly, but the extraction was far from over. Streams of water ran across the path, some deeper than they appeared. Mud clung to boots and slowed movement. Every movement required care, and even the smallest misstep could undo hours of progress. The Deathworlders moved ahead, scouting the safest paths and signaling to the team when hazards appeared. The scientists followed diligently, their bodies aching, their energy waning, but their determination unwavering. They had come too far to falter now. Along the way, moments of emotional intensity surfaced. The youngest scientist, exhausted and frightened, admitted their fear of failing or slowing the team. The Deathworlders responded not with judgment, but with encouragement, patience, and practical guidance. The group shared small moments of comfort, a reassuring hand, a nod of approval, a brief word of encouragement. These small gestures reinforced trust and reminded everyone that survival was not just physical, it was emotional and psychological as well. The extraction required constant adjustment. Loose rocks, hidden crevices, and sudden drops demanded that everyone remain alert, flexible, and responsive. At times, the team had to pause to clear debris or reinforce anchors. These moments, though tense, were opportunities to learn from the Deathworlders' expertise. The scientists absorbed each lesson carefully, understanding that every detail could mean the difference between life and death. Finally, after hours of exhausting effort, the team reached a relatively safe plateau. Relief washed over them, but exhaustion was evident on every face. The Deathworlders guided them to a secure area where temporary shelters, supplies, and resting zones were set up. Injuries were treated, food and water were shared, and the team finally allowed themselves to breathe more freely. The sense of accomplishment was palpable, not just for surviving, but for having endured together under extreme pressure with skill, courage, and teamwork guiding every step. During the final hours of Part 4, the team reflected on the journey. They had learned more than survival skills. They had witnessed bravery, patience, and the power of human skill in the face of extreme danger. The Deathworlders were not only rescuers, they were teachers, mentors, and examples of what could be, achieved when preparation met courage. The stranded scientists understood that the extraction had not only saved their lives, but had transformed them, instilling lessons they would carry forever. By the end of this harrowing day, the team was safe, temporarily sheltered, and ready for the final leg of the journey back to the main base. Though fatigue weighed heavily on everyone, spirits were higher than they had been since the storm first struck. The extraction had tested them physically, mentally, and emotionally, but it had also shown them the strength of trust, teamwork, and perseverance. They had survived Deathworld thanks to skill, courage, and determination, and now they would face the final challenges with hope and confidence. The journey back to the main base was quieter than the extraction had been. The team, exhausted and battered, moved steadily under the guidance of the Deathworlders. Every member was aware of how far they had come and how close they had come to disaster. The once terrifying landscape of the Deathworld no longer seemed entirely hostile. It was still dangerous, but they had survived its tests. Each step forward was a reminder of courage, teamwork, and human resilience. When they finally reached the safety of the base, relief swept over everyone. The main building, equipped with medical facilities, warm shelters, and communication systems, felt like a paradise compared to the unforgiving terrain they had just left. The scientists were treated immediately for injuries, though most were minor. Scrapes, bruises, and exhaustion were the primary concerns. The Deathworlders helped organize the recovery, ensuring that everyone had food, rest, and water. Their presence remained calm and reassuring, a stabilizing force after days of constant stress. The first few hours at the base were spent in quiet recovery. Some team members slept deeply, letting their bodies catch up on the sleep they had missed during the storm and extraction. Others sat quietly, reflecting on the ordeal. Conversations were hushed, respectful of the exhaustion that weighed heavily on everyone. The younger scientists asked questions, eager to understand the methods and strategies the Deathworlders had used to ensure survival. Each answer reinforced respect and admiration for the rescuers, highlighting the depth of their skill and experience. Gradually, as energy returned, the team began to share stories of the journey. Moments of fear, triumph, and teamwork were recounted, often with laughter or disbelief. They spoke of narrow escapes, quick thinking, and small acts of courage that had made a significant difference. Each story reinforced the bonds formed in the most extreme circumstances. The scientists realized that their shared struggle had created a connection that went beyond simple teamwork. It was a shared experience that would remain with them for life. The Deathworlders, ever professional, took the time to debrief the BOI team. They explained what had been done correctly, what could have been improved, and how to prepare for future expeditions. Every lesson was practical, designed to improve survival skills and decision-making in harsh environments. The scientists listened intently, understanding that these lessons were not just about surviving Deathworld, but about learning to respond to any extreme situation with skill, calm, and cooperation. As the hours passed, emotions began to surface, more openly. Relief gave way to gratitude, and gratitude to reflection. The scientists thought about the friends and family who had been waiting for news, about how close they had come to disaster, and about the courage required to endure. Some admitted fear, others shared moments of doubt or despair, but all acknowledged the unwavering support of both their teammates and the Deathworlders. These reflections created a sense of closure, helping each person process the intensity of the experience. Recognition was given where it was due. The Deathworlders were celebrated not with ceremonies or awards, but with heartfelt thanks, gestures of respect, and quiet acknowledgement of their skill and bravery. The scientists understood that without these elite rescuers, survival would have been unlikely. Every instruction followed, every piece of advice heeded, had made a critical difference. The experience instilled a deep respect for preparation, skill, and the power of human cooperation in life-threatening situations. Personal growth was evident among the scientists. They realized that they had faced fears and challenges that had seemed insurmountable just days before. Each person had learned more about their own limits, their resilience, and their capacity to trust and support others. The Deathworlders had not only saved their lives, they had shown them what true courage and preparedness looked like. The team knew that these lessons would influence them for the rest of their careers and lives, shaping how they approached danger, teamwork, and problem-solving in the future. Over the next few days, recovery continued, both physically and mentally. The scientists attended medical checkups, repaired damaged equipment, and debriefed with their supervisors. They shared their experiences with researchers and colleagues, detailing the extreme conditions, the challenges faced, and the role of the Deathworlders in ensuring survival. Their story became not just one of danger and rescue, but of learning, growth, and human perseverance. Each member of the team carried a renewed sense of confidence, strengthened by the knowledge that even in the most extreme conditions, preparation, skill, and cooperation could overcome almost any obstacle. The team also reflected on the environment they had just left. Deathworld was unforgiving, yes, but it was also a place of lessons. The planet had tested them, exposed weaknesses, and revealed strengths they had not known existed. They had learned to respect it, to adapt to it, and to navigate it with skill and care. Their time on the planet had been harrowing, but it had also been transformative. They had endured, survived, and grown stronger for it. In quiet moments, some team members contemplated what they had learned about themselves. Fear, doubt, and exhaustion had been constant companions, but so too had determination, ingenuity, and courage. The experience had taught them that survival was about more than physical strength. It was about resilience, trust, patience, and the willingness to learn. Each person carried away a deeper understanding of human capability, the importance of teamwork, and the power of calm, precise action in the face of danger. By the end of their stay at the base, the team was ready to return to their normal lives, but the impact of the ordeal remained. They had survived Deathworld, not by luck, but by a combination of skill, courage, and cooperation. They had faced fear, endured hardship, and learned invaluable lessons about themselves and the world around them. The memory of the Deathworlders, guidance, bravery, and expertise stayed with them, a lasting reminder of the strength that could emerge in even the most dire circumstances. As they prepared to leave, the team looked back at the planet one last time. The cliffs, the storms, the harsh terrain. It had been a formidable adversary, but it had also been a teacher. They carried with them stories of survival, courage, and human resilience, and a deep appreciation for the skill and bravery of those who had come to their aid. Though the ordeal was over, the lessons would stay with them forever, shaping the way they approached challenges, danger, and the unpredictable nature of life itself. In the end, the team knew they had been lucky, yes, but luck alone had not saved them. It had been preparation, trust, skill, and determination that had carried them through. They had learned the importance of teamwork, the value of calm and clear thinking under pressure, and the strength that comes from believing in oneself and others. Deathworld had tested them, and they had survived, not just physically but mentally and emotionally, stronger than they had ever imagined possible.